Hello everybody, I hope you are doing all right. Today's session is on IELTS academic writing paper. Now IELTS exam is a high stake exam which is mainly for university studies, for entrance in university studies, but a lot of times it could be used for immigration purposes. Now, today's session will focus only on writing. Academic writing tends to be very difficult for all the students, really. It does not really matter if you are a native or non-native English speaker. Academic writing is going to be hard. So it's not going to be easy at all. Now, let's continue with the sections of an overview of academic writing. So the test format is exactly 60 minutes, and there are two tasks in this 60 minutes. Task number one is just for 20 minutes, and that is around 150 words. Task number two is double the time, and so it's 40 minutes, and that is for a minimum of 250 words. Now, words are counted by the examiners, so remember not to write too many words or too few words. One tip that I would give is that in the day of the exam, do not waste your time trying to understand how many words you have written or how many words you should write, but instead focus on how many lines you have written. So if you practiced before, you would know how many lines are in 150 words and how many lines are in 250 words. So do not waste time counting words. You don't have the time, you do not have the brain power to count words while you are doing an IELTS exam. Let's continue. So answers must be written on the answer sheet. The answers must be written in full. The notes that, there are not acceptable, notes are not acceptable, so you need to write in full paragraphs. And you may make notes on the question paper, but they cannot be taken from the test room, and those notes cannot be considered as your answer. So remember, you need to write in full, and you need to write in complete paragraphs. So basically, your sentences need to be complete, and your paragraphs need to be complete. And everything should be written on the answer sheet, not on the question paper. So task number one is generally easier than task number two, because in task number one you already have bits of information that you need to write about. So you already have the knowledge, you have the words to write about. And this task is generally easier, so because you already have some information, it's only 20 minutes, and you should write around 150 words, a minimum of 150 words. Again, do not write many more words, but do not waste your time trying to count the words. Now, in this task, you may have to interpret a diagram or a table, and you'll present information in your own words. Now, the way you'll look at it is you will see what kind of task you have. So sometimes you might have to organize and present existing data. And for example, the data could be on money spent on different forms of entertainment. Another type of question would be describe stages of process or a procedure, such as stages of human evolution. Another one could be an object, so describe an event or a series of events or sequence of events. And it could sometimes you could have to describe a manual of something, so basically how a car engine works. In all the cases, as I said, the good news is that the information is already there. You just have to think about organizing the information and putting it together, looking into the coherence and cohesion of the information. So basically understanding how the sentences connect and how the thought develops completely. And remember, focus on not writing too many words, but not writing too few words. It does help if you practice beforehand, so you know how many lines are included in that 150 words. Let's continue now with task number two. So in task number two, you have to write for 40 minutes, and task number two will need from you a minimum of 250 words. Now, task number two is more complex because in task number two, you only have the topic. So you do not have any kind of information, and you will need to think about it, write about it in those 40 minutes. So that's why I said it's very important not to waste a minute with task 1. Task 1 needs 20 minutes. You will be informed that there are 20 minutes. There will be always a timer in front of you, normally on a screen where you would notice the time. So pay attention to that to the timing, and do not not spend more than 20 minutes in the first task. So in the second task, you have to present a viewpoint or an argument or a problem. Now, what's the difference between these? Well, when we're talking about a point of view, it's generally easier than an argument, because in an argument, you'll need to have both sides of the topic, and it's the same thing as in real life. So basically, when you argue, there is always somebody that thinks different from what you think. When you're talking about only one point of view, that is easier, because you'll just be talking about one side of the story, one side of the understanding, so that it's generally easier. And sometimes you may have to write about a problem. So you will have a problem and you will be writing about that solution. So you will first explain what the problem is and what kind of issues are related to that problem. And then you'll explain how that problem can be resolved, so the solutions. Now, the first one is justifying an opinion. Generally, it's easier to justify an opinion. So in task 1, when you're talking about only one viewpoint, it could be justifying an opinion. So for example, do you think trial by jury should be used in all criminal cases? This is just one-sided opinion. You will just have to think about if it should be used or if it shouldn't be used, and 250 words will just be based on that one-sided opinion. Task number 2 tends to be, the second topic, when it's argument, is a little more complicated. So compare and contrast evidence, opinions, and implications. In this case, we will have to compare and contrast. So you will have to explain reasons. You will have to explain how this can be compared and contrasted. And you will have to explain opinions and the implications of these opinions. So the task is more complicated. And then we will have, we may have tasks which could have, as I said, evidence or argument. And in this case, whenever you're talking about arguments, you always have something in the end which says, what extent do you agree? Or to what extent do you disagree? So in this case, you will be arguing about a problem. So this was today's session. We'll continue next time with more explanations on the content and the structure of IELTS writing. Until then, take good care of yourself and see you soon. Bye-bye.